So let's move to the balance sheet now, and this is the balance sheet of Colgate-Palmolive for 2007 onwards. So we have the usual balance sheet structure. This is current assets at the top, and then we have the long-term assets. Likewise, we have the liabilities divided into various types, current liabilities and long-term liabilities. And then we have the shareholders equity section as well. This is the overall balance sheet of Colgate for past 6 years. Now let's kind of do an analysis and understand the trends within the balance sheet. So one approach that we have looked at earlier was that vertical analysis can be done not only on the income statement, but we can do the same thing on the balance sheet. So let's try and look at how balance sheet vertical analysis will look like for Colgate. So here we go. The first entry, cash and cash equivalents. This is equal to, we take this cash and cash equivalent, and this will be divided by total assets. So you remember each and every line item in income statement was divided by the top line or the net sales. Here the total number is total assets. So we divide each and every line item by total asset and see how much percentage does it reflect. So this is 4.2% of the total assets. So I'll just tweak this formula to have absolute references so that I can copy and paste this formula across the table. So let me do that real quick. And what do we have is the vertical analysis for Colgate done with a single formula. So now what is the next step? This was the calculation part. The next step obviously is to analyze this. So we're doing this not for someone else to analyze. We being analysts need to analyze this company, see what the trends are. Here we see that it was 4.2% in 2007, and cash and cash equivalents have actually increased to 6.6% over the period of 6 years. Likewise, receivables have kind of decreased from 6.6 to 12.5%, and you may see that there's a visible trend, that there's a graph that you can predict. It's a downtrend. Receivables are going down. So does this mean that the company is following a strict credit policy? So we may have to kind of investigate this further. So here also we are getting important inputs which needs to be investigated. Likewise, look at inventory. Inventory has slightly dropped to 10.2. So anything to do with storage policy? Need to investigate. So what is your property, plant and equipment as a percentage of total assets? It was 29.8%. and now it is 28.7%. Doesn't look like much has been done in between. It's slightly increased in 2008 and 9, but gone back to 28.7% now. Another kind of trend you may like to look at is what is other assets. It was 3.6% here, then it reduced to 1.6%, and then now it is back to 6.8%. So you need to investigate this. Now, why it is very much required to investigate is that many a times management may like to give some broad classification of other assets. What has been included in other assets? So if this is a very huge amount like 6.8%, definitely you may like to understand why this is so. And the second thing would be that this is a volatile trend. So maybe you may even want to understand what these other assets are all about. So that's why you may have to investigate each and every line item, and the vertical analysis just shows you the direction of analysis. So let's look at your total current liabilities. It has also decreased over a period of time. A good situation to be in for a company. So interesting. Likewise, look at long-term debt. Looks like in the initial years the long-term debt was reduced to 25%, and now it is back to 36%. So probably the company is following some levered policy of taking additional loans. So let's look at this interesting term called treasury stock. This treasury stock is another important term, and second being the retained earnings. So as you can see, retained earnings is more than 100%. So And if you look at treasury stock, it is with a negative sign. So treasury stock is nothing but a buyback of company shares, and this has been done in large volumes in Colgate. And as you may have kind of interpreted from this, most of the retained earnings is actually used to buy back shares. So why do companies buy back shares? Maybe one reason could be that they feel that the shares are not properly valued. It doesn't reflect the fair value. So let's buy back the shares so that it gives an indication to the public that if the company or the management is buying stocks, that would mean that obviously they believe in themselves and their company, that their shares are not worth as they are trading as of now. So obviously it makes a lot of sense to look at treasury stocks in that light. Likewise, you may see that non-controlling assets have increased from 1.1 to 1.5%. So as we go about analyzing the vertical analysis of Colgate, we see that there are a lot of questions that we want to ask. We also understand certain kind of trends, and it helps us in terms of analysis. So accompanied with horizontal analysis and vertical analysis, we will now look at what is ratio analysis. So all these three activities done together will help us in analyzing whether the stock is good or bad from the fundamental point of view.